I realized my sister might be dying. At the exact same moment, she believed she was celebrating the happiest day of her life. That's how this story begins. Not with a gentle suspicion, not with a quiet worry, but with the sudden, terrifying certainty that something inside her was growing fast, pushing against her organs, stealing her breath, and she thought it was her baby kicking. She didn't know. No one at that party knew. But I did, because when she placed that glossy ultrasound printout into my hand, the world didn't just stop it fractured. The shape was wrong. The density was wrong. The position was impossible. What I was holding was not an image of a child. It was a warning, a silent, desperate cry for help disguised as a smiling 3D picture. And while everyone around us cheered, while pastel balloons swayed in the warm afternoon breeze, while the countdown to the big reveal echoed through the backyard, I was staring at something that should have never been shown to her, something that could end her life. But here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. That wasn't the most disturbing thing I discovered, not even close, because behind that single fake ultrasound, there was a secret so dark, so well hidden, that by the time I reached the truth, I wasn't just fighting to save my sister. I was fighting to expose an entire system built on lies. Before we continue, if you want to follow stories like this, stories that peel back layers of deception and lead you into places most people never knew existed, please subscribe so you won't miss what comes next, especially the part of the story that still feels unspeakable. Now let's go back to the moment everything began to unravel. The afternoon sun was warm, the kind of soft, golden light that makes everything look gentler than it really is. My sister's backyard had been transformed into the sort of picture-perfect scene you'd see in a suburban magazine, pastel streamers draped across the fence, a long table covered in tiny sandwiches and pink and blue cupcakes, neighbors mingling with relatives, the soft hum of easy conversation filling the air. It was peaceful, almost idyllic, the kind of day where no one expects anything bad to happen. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, not just because of the ultrasound image still burning in the back of my mind. It was the way my sister, Grace, moved. Or rather, the way she didn't. She waddled through the crowd with a careful slowness that didn't match her usual energetic self. She was only supposed to be in her second trimester, or so she believed. And yet every step seemed to take more effort than it should have. She pressed a hand to her side now and then, smiling through whatever discomfort she was hiding. To everyone else, she looked like a glowing, expectant mother. But to me, something felt off. I watched her greet guests with that bright, rehearsed happiness that made people adore her. She was good at that, good at making others feel included, loved, part of something warm. Grace had always been the heart of our family, the one who believed in surprises, in magic, in happy endings. It made sense she'd wanted a big gender reveal party, a spectacle, a celebration of a future she'd dreamed of for years. Her husband, Daniel, hovered nearby, trying his best to keep up with her energy. He carried plates, fetched drinks, cracked jokes that made people laugh politely. But every so often, his eyes flicked toward me quick, nervous glances. He knew something was wrong too. He just didn't know what yet. The big black balloon, the one that would burst into pink or blue confetti floated in the center of the yard like a dark planet, waiting to reveal its core. Kids ran around it, chasing each other, giggling. Their laughter cut through the heavy knot in my stomach. I tried to pretend. I really did. I smiled, nodded, accepted a glass of sparkling cider someone handed me. I even forced small talk with a neighbor who insisted on telling me about her dog's allergies for far too long. But every time I blinked, I saw that image again, the impossible shape pretending to be a baby. And then Grace caught my arm. "Sis," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "Isn't this perfect?" Her joy was so genuine, so pure. It made my chest tighten. I didn't want to be the one to break that. Her dress, a soft cream color, with tiny embroidered flowers, flowed gently around her. But the fabric stretched strangely across her stomach, pulled taut in a way that didn't match the normal curve of a pregnant belly. Too firm, too still, too unnatural. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I've been feeling her all morning. Little kicks, little flutters, like she knows today is special." My heart ached. I forced a smile and nodded, but inside, everything twisted. If only she knew. Around us, guests drifted from table to table, dipping fruit into chocolate, snapping photos in front of the boy or girl banner, making guesses, debating names. Someone had set up a small speaker that played soft acoustic music, adding an almost surreal calm to the scene. But my attention stayed fixed on Grace. She'd gained more weight than she should have, for how far along she believed she was. Her breathing was slightly labored. Her complexion, once rosy, now had a subtle pallor beneath the makeup she'd carefully applied. And when she laughed, a high, cheerful sound, the corner of her mouth twitched in a way that told me she'd been forcing it more than usual. I'd seen these signs before, not in expectant mothers, but in patients. And then another detail struck me. She never rested a hand on her belly, the way most pregnant women naturally do. She rested it against her side, almost protectively, almost as if touching her stomach directly caused discomfort. Every gesture, every movement, my mind cataloged them automatically, as it had been trained to do. But no matter how much evidence balled in front of me, I wished I was wrong. I wished I could tell myself I was overthinking. I wished I could enjoy the party like everyone else and believe the world was as gentle as it looked in this backyard. Grace leaned in again, eyes softening. "Thank you for coming. I know you're busy." I swallowed. Of course I came. I wouldn't miss it. And that was true. For better or worse, I had to be here. Because whatever was happening inside my sister, whatever that image had shown me, I needed to keep her close until I could get her somewhere safe, somewhere with real equipment, somewhere with real answers. But first, I had to make it through this party, through the countdown, through the moment she'd been waiting for, since the second she found out she was pregnant. I looked around at the smiling faces. I listened to the easy laughter. I watched the balloon sway gently in the breeze. And I knew this celebration, this perfect, pastel-painted afternoon, was built entirely on a lie. Daniel didn't notice me slipping into the house. He was too focused on the grill, flipping burgers, laughing with a couple of co-workers, trying his best to look relaxed. But the moment our eyes met through the patio door, something in his expression changed. He set the spatula down, mumbled an excuse, and followed me inside. The kitchen felt strangely quiet, compared to the yard outside. The sliding door shut behind him, and the muffled joy of 40 guests faded into a dull hum. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the tension building in his shoulders, the way he braced himself like a man stepping into cold water. "What's going on?" he asked finally. His voice was too thin, too tight. "You looked scared." I didn't want to say it. I wished someone else could, but it had to be me. "We need to talk," I said softly. Privately, I led him down the hallway to the small laundry room. A cramped, narrow space with a washer, a dryer, and just enough room for 2 people to stand and have their world fall apart. I closed the door behind us. He tried to joke. "You're not going to scold me about the menu, are you?" Grace said no, seafood. That's not a baby on the ultrasound. The words hit him like a physical blow. His mouth fell open, then closed again. The color drained from his face. He looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. What do you mean?" he whispered. I held the printout between us. "This isn't a fetus. The shape is wrong. The density is wrong. The position is impossible. Whatever's growing inside Grace, it's not a child." He shook his head. "No." She heard the heartbeat. They played it for us. She felt the baby move. "A pre-recorded heartbeat is easy to play," I said gently. "Some places do it to make the experience feel more magical." His brow furrowed. "No, no." She felt the baby moving. "The kicks. Large masses can shift." I explained. "They press against organs. The movement feels like kicking, especially to someone who's never been pregnant." He staggered back until he hit the washing machine. For a moment, he just stood there, hands trembling, staring at the floor. "Are you saying she's sick?" I took a breath. "I'm saying we don't know what it is yet, but she needs a real scan, a proper one. Not the kind you get at those boutique studios." He rubbed his face with both hands, and I could see tears forming in the corners of his eyes. "She's been so happy." He choked. She finally felt like everything was coming together. "She's been talking to the baby every night." I felt a squeeze of pain in my chest. "I know. That's why we have to be careful with how we tell her. But we can't wait. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Now." Oh. Outside the laundry room, voices rose in excitement. Someone was making an announcement. The countdown was getting closer. "We have to get her out of here," Daniel whispered desperately. "But she'll never leave." "Not today. We don't have to leave yet." I said, "Let her have the reveal, just the reveal. She's waited so long. After that, we tell her we need to stop somewhere. I'll drive. I'll call ahead." Daniel nodded slowly, shoulders shaking. "She's going to be devastated." "I know." A faint laugh floated through the closed door. Grace's laugh. Bright and hopeful. "She's been planning this for months," he said. "She already picked the name. She painted the nursery yellow. She talks to that bump like the baby can hear her." His voice cracked. "And now you're telling me it's all fake?" "It's not fake," I said. "It's real. Just not what she thinks it is." He pressed a hand to his forehead. "How do I protect her? How do I tell her something like this?" "You won't be alone," I said. "I'll help you through every step." Another round of cheering erupted outside. The countdown had started. 3, 2, 1. A roar of celebration followed, mixed with a burst of laughter. The balloon had just popped. Daniel and I stood in silence as pink confetti drifted past the laundry room window, swirling lazily in the warm air The world outside was celebrating a little girl who didn't exist. I rested a hand on the doorknob. "We go out there," I said softly. "We smile, we give her this moment, and when it's over, we take her to the hospital." Daniel swallowed hard, wiped his face, and forced a shaky nod. "Okay." I opened the door. Warm light flooded the hallway. Grace stood in the center of the yard, pink confetti tangled in her hair, tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears. Beautiful, heartbreaking, innocent tears. And as I stepped outside to join her, I couldn't shake the truth pressing against my ribs like a knife. She had no idea that everything she believed was about to be destroyed. The celebration went on around us, as if nothing had changed, as if the world hadn't cracked open in the laundry room just minutes earlier. Grace was still glowing, still wiping happy tears from her cheeks, still hugging friends who squealed and congratulated her on the little girl. Pink confetti clung to her eyelashes like tiny, sparkling lies. I forced myself to smile. I clapped politely. I even posed for a few photos when she pulled me close. My arm wrapped around her shoulders felt strangely fragile, like she might shatter if I held her too tightly. I kept thinking about the shape on the ultrasound, the density, the impossible positioning details I couldn't explain to her here. Not while she was laughing. Daniel hovered near her, trying to match her joy, but his eyes kept darting toward me, checking, questioning, silently pleading for guidance. He looked like a man trying to smile while holding a live grenade. After the cake was cut and the cupcakes were eaten, the crowd began trickling out, hugs, well wishes, promises to visit soon. The warm glow of late afternoon softened into early evening. The sky shifted from gold to lavender. The air settled into a quiet calm that made everything feel heavier. Grace sighed happily, brushing confetti from her hair. "I can't believe it," she said. "A little girl. I always wanted a girl." Her voice trembled with joy. "We're so happy for you." I managed. She smiled at me, warm and trusting in a way that nearly broke me. "It means so much that you were here," she whispered. "You're always so busy with the hospital." "I wouldn't have missed today," I said. And that was true, though not for the reason she thought. As the last guests disappeared down the driveway, Daniel cleared his throat. "Hey, Grace," he said lightly. "Your sister and I need to run a quick errand. Something came up earlier." Grace frowned. "Now, but we still haven't cleaned up." "You go rest," I said softly. "We'll handle everything when we get back." She tilted her head. "What's wrong?" My pulse quickened. This was the moment, the beginning of everything she wasn't ready to hear. "Nothing serious. I just need to swing by the hospital for a moment. Paperwork issue. Daniel's gonna drive me." Her eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said quickly. "Completely fine." She searched my face, unsure, but trying to trust me. "Okay, just don't be long." "I won't." She hugged me, her belly pressing gently into my stomach. Too hard, too unyielding. I forced myself not to flinch. 10 minutes later, Daniel and I were in the car. Grace stood on the porch, waving cheerfully as we pulled out of the driveway. The porch light cast a warm glow around her. She looked like every vision of a hopeful mother in a movie. My chest tightened. I pressed a hand to my heart and whispered, too quietly for Daniel to hear, "I'm sorry." We drove in silence for several blocks until Daniel finally said, What do I tell her when she texts? Something small, something harmless. Just buy us time to get her into the ER. He nodded, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Do you think it's cancer? I don't know, I said honestly. But if it is, the clock is ticking. He inhaled shakily. She felt the kicks. She really believed. I know. We pulled into the emergency entrance. I'd already called ahead. The moment we walked in, the triage nurse recognized me and nodded. We have a room ready. Grace arrived 10 minutes later in an Uber, confusion written across her face. She rushed toward me. Why did you come here? Daniel said, you had chest pain. What's happening? Daniel froze. He hadn't expected the lie to change in translation. I stepped forward and took her hands. Grace, we need to talk. Her eyes darted between the nurses, the bright hospital lights, the serious expressions. Why are there doctors here? What's going on? Am I okay? Is the baby okay? I swallowed hard. We need to do another ultrasound. A proper one, just to make sure everything is all right. Her face went pale. Why? What did you see earlier? Let's go to a private room, I said gently. We'll explain everything. In the consultation room, a senior radiologist was waiting a woman I trusted with my own life. Grace sat on the bed, silent and trembling. Daniel stood behind her, hands on her shoulders. I sat beside her. Grace, the place you went for your ultrasound. It wasn't a medical facility. She blinked rapidly. What do you mean they had uniforms? They showed me pictures. They let me hear her heartbeat. They aren't licensed. They use preset images. And the heartbeat could have been a recording. Her lips parted. She shook her head. No. I felt her move. I felt her. That's why we need the scan, I said softly, to know what's really happening. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You think I'm not pregnant? I hesitated. I think we need answers. And we'll get them right now. The radiologist dimmed the lights and applied gel to Grace's abdomen. The room fell silent, except for Grace's shaky breathing. The screen lit up, and within seconds, I watched the radiologist's expression change. A subtle shift, a tightening, a flicker of alarm she tried and failed to hide. Grace turned to me, eyes wide with terror. What is that? She whispered. Where's my baby? I reached for her hand and braced myself for the truth that was about to destroy everything she believed. There are moments in life when the air in the room changes, when you can feel something shifting, cracking, unraveling right in front of you. That was what happened when the radiologist stopped the probe and quietly asked for a second doctor. Grace didn't understand what that meant. Daniel did. His face went gray. I stood beside them, watching every tiny detail, the shape, the shadow, the mass that didn't move, didn't pulse, didn't resemble life in any way. The screen showed the truth in cold grayscale, a large, solid structure where no baby should be. What is that, Grace? Whispered again. Her voice was barely a breath. Where's her heartbeat? Why can't I hear her heartbeat? The radiologist took a seat, her voice gentle but steady. Grace, we aren't seeing a fetus. What we're seeing appears to be a mass. It is not consistent with pregnancy. Grace stared at the screen, stared and stared, as if she could force a baby into existence just by wanting it badly enough. No, she whispered. No, that can't be right. I felt her. I felt her. She reached for her belly, pressing her palm against it, as though begging for a kick. Her fingers trembled. Daniel knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get you help." I touched her shoulder. "You're not alone. And we caught this early enough to do something about it." But she shook her head violently. "No, you're wrong. Something's wrong with your machine. The other place showed her perfectly. They said she was moving. They played her heartbeat. Her voice cracked. Her entire world was collapsing in that small dark room. The second doctor, a gynecologic oncologist, confirmed what I already knew. "Grace, you are not pregnant. You have a mass that needs to be removed as soon as possible. We will take care of you, but you need surgery." Grace covered her mouth, sobbing into her hands. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, crying silently behind her shoulder. And I sat there, watching her grief take shape, knowing that behind this pain was something else, something man-made, something intentional, something that needed to be exposed. Because whatever was happening to my sister, it began the moment someone placed a fake ultrasound image into her hands. The surgery was scheduled for sunrise the next morning. There was nothing left for me to do at the hospital that night. So while Grace slept under sedation and Daniel sat by her bed, holding her hand, I drove straight to the place that had lied to her. Miracle Moments Studio. The name alone made my jaw clench. The building sat quietly between a nail salon and a vape shop. A cheerful turquoise sign glowing unnervingly bright against the nighttime sky. The windows were covered with posters of smiling babies and glowing pregnant women. Everything was designed to look comforting, inviting, trustworthy. I stepped out of my car and stared at the entrance. This was where the nightmare started, but I wasn't going in as her sister. I was going in as a doctor. The sign on the door said, "Open by appointment only." But to my surprise, the front door wasn't locked. The lights inside were dimmed. The lobby empty, except for a small desk, cluttered with teddy bears, printouts, and glittery business cards. Soft lullaby music drifted through hidden speakers, sweet, gentle, deeply unsettling in the silence of an empty room. Behind the desk, a computer monitor glowed with a screensaver, rotating 3D images of babies. All smiling, all unrealistically perfect. I clicked the mouse. A login page appeared, but the username field autofilled with Tech Support 1. The password, shockingly, was saved. The desktop opened, and that was when I saw it. A folder titled Templates. Inside were dozens of pre-rendered images, 3D fetal models labeled by gender, by weeks of pregnancy, by facial expression. A baby smiling at 24 weeks. A baby waving at 18 weeks. A baby sleeping at 14 weeks. Impossible. Not medically accurate. Not real. My chest tightened. I clicked through another folder labeled Heartbeat Audio. Track 01, girl. Track 22, boy. Track 03, fast heartbeat. Track 04, calm heartbeat. Recordings, all pre-made, all ready to be played at a moment's notice. I dug deeper. Booking logs, client notes, payment records. Grace's appointment was there. Under outcome, it said, healthy. Girl, good movement. Client satisfied. Satisfied. Like she had ordered a product. A door creaked behind me. I spun around. A woman stood at the entrance to the back room, late 40s. Dark hair pulled into a tight bun. Wearing a pink polo with the studio logo. She looked startled, then irritated. "Can I help you?" she said sharply. I stared at her, my heart pounding with anger. I'm here about the scan you gave my sister. She narrowed her eyes. If you want a copy of the video, you need to fill out a request. That wasn't a baby you showed her. I snapped. You gave her a template image. A fake. And because of that, she nearly died. Her face froze for a split second, just long enough to confirm everything I needed to know. But then, instead of apologizing, instead of showing fear or remorse, she smiled. A slow, unsettling smile. You have no idea, she said softly, how many women come here wanting to believe in something. I stepped toward her. This ends now. But she shook her head, and her smile grew wider. Oh, honey, she whispered, you're not even close to the part you should be afraid of. The woman's smile stayed with me long after I left the studio. It wasn't the smile of someone who'd made a mistake. It was the smile of someone who had been caught and didn't care. By the time I got back to the hospital, Grace was already in pre-op. Daniel sat beside her bed, clutching her hand, murmuring to her, even though she was half asleep. I didn't say anything about Miracle Moment Studio yet. It wasn't the time. Not while she was facing surgery at dawn. But as soon as the doors closed and she was wheeled away, I stepped into the hallway, took a breath, and pulled out my phone. I had to know if this had happened to anyone else. I opened a private social media account I'd barely used in years and posted, if you received a scan from Miracle Moment Studio and something didn't feel right, please contact me. I didn't expect much, maybe 1 or 2 messages, maybe nothing at all. But within 10 minutes, my notifications exploded. At first, it was just a handful, then dozens. Then hundreds. Women, men, couples. Stories poured in raw, angry, confused, heartbreaking. I sat down on a bench outside the operating room and started reading. A woman named Karen wrote, they told me my baby was a boy. At my real anatomy scan, they told me I was having a girl and she had a congenital heart defect. Miracle Moments never mentioned. Another message came from a woman named Lily. They said my pregnancy was perfectly healthy. I miscarried 2 weeks later. My doctor said the baby had stopped developing long before my appointment at that place. A couple named Jason and Maria sent a long message. They told us the baby was smiling and waving. The doctor told us later that our little one had anencephaly. They should have seen it. They didn't say a word. I scrolled, my pulse pounding harder with each story. Some were angry, some were grieving, some were confused, unsure, frightened. But then another message appeared, short, blunt, terrifying. From a woman named Paige. My sister died. I froze. I opened the message. Her sister had gone to Miracle Moment Studio at 10 weeks. They told her everything looked normal, perfect. The baby is healthy, heartbeat strong, they said. But she'd actually had an ectopic pregnancy, one of the most dangerous complications of early pregnancy, and one that is visible on an ultrasound if you're trained to see it. She collapsed 2 weeks later. Internal bleeding. She was alone. By the time paramedics arrived, she was already gone. Her family found her appointment card from Miracle Moment Studio tucked into her purse. I stared at my phone, numb, hands shaking. This wasn't just unethical. This wasn't just immoral. This was deadly. Someone had died. Someone who trusted them, just like Grace had. I breathed in slowly, forcing my thoughts to settle. I needed clarity. I needed a plan. I replied to Paige, offering my condolences, expressing how sorry I was, but also asking if she'd be willing to talk further. She said yes. Another message appeared, this one from a user named MS. No photo, no details, just, they told me I had twins. I only had one. A blighted ovum, I guessed. An empty gestational sac that appears early, but never develops. Miracle Moments had shown her 2 smiling faces, neither of which existed. As I read, pattern after pattern emerged. Women were told they were farther along than they really were, or earlier than they actually were, or that they were carrying boys when doctors later confirmed girls, or girls when doctors confirmed boys. Some were shown baby faces that didn't even match their gestational age. One woman recognized her baby's face as the same image used on a poster in the studio's lobby. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't just ignorance. This was a system designed to give people what they wanted most: hope, excitement, a glimpse into the future they imagined. Even if that future was fake, then came the message that made my heart drop. A woman named Rebecca wrote, "I used to work there. I can tell you everything." I set the phone down, hands trembling, breath short. Rebecca's message continued, "But you have to understand, Miracle Moments. Studio is just one location. There are more, a lot more, all using the same software, all taking orders from the same person. And if they find out what you're doing, they won't stop." I swallowed hard. My mouth felt dry. This wasn't just about Grace. This wasn't even just about the women in my inbox. This was bigger, much bigger. Rebecca added, "If you really want the truth, meet me tomorrow. I'll tell you everything. But don't come alone." I stared at those words. Don't come alone. And suddenly, everything the woman at the studio said, her smirk, her confidence, her chilling whisper, "You're not even close to the part you should be afraid of," made perfect, horrifying sense, because this wasn't just one studio committing fraud. It was a network, a coordinated operation, and I had just pulled the first thread loose. If I kept tugging, the whole thing might unravel, but it might take me with it. Rebecca agreed to meet the next morning in a quiet cafe just a few blocks from the hospital. It was one of those places with soft lamps, polished wood tables, and old framed photographs on the walls, the kind of comforting setting that felt impossibly out of place for the conversation we were about to have. She was already there when I walked in, sitting in the corner with a cup of untouched coffee. She looked younger than I expected, early 30s, maybe, but her eyes belonged to someone who'd seen too much. She didn't greet me. She didn't introduce herself. She just pushed a folder across the table and whispered, "They're not just faking ultrasounds. They're hiding things too." I opened the folder. Dozens of printed emails, client notes, internal memos. In one message, a technician wrote, "Client showing abnormal structure. Should we notify?" And the reply, "No. Use template number 4. Keep session positive. No medical comments." Another file showed a spreadsheet titled Annual Projections, Multi-State Expansion. Rebecca leaned in. "There are 27 locations," she said. "Same software, same owner, same instructions." My stomach twisted. The owner? Is it the woman I saw last night? Rebecca shook her head slowly. "No, she's just a supervisor. The real owner? You won't find her name on anything. She uses shell companies, fake addresses, disposable numbers." I exhaled. "So you're saying this is deliberate, coordinated?" "Of course it is," she said. "Why do you think everything looks so polished? The perfect posters, the matching scripts, they're selling experiences. selling hope, and they know most people won't question it. Her voice cracked a little. I joined because I needed a job. I stayed because I didn't know how to get out. And when I tried to leave, she swallowed hard. They made threats. What kind of threats? You don't want to know. I nodded, though my pulse was racing. She handed me a USB drive. This has recordings, she whispered. Internal calls, instructions. I saved them because I knew one day someone would need proof. She paused. Just be careful. Once you start pulling on this thread, they notice. By the time Grace came out of surgery, police investigators were already reviewing the evidence Rebecca gave me. Her surgery went well. The mass was large, but removed successfully. She slept peacefully in recovery, unaware of the storm building around her. Daniel sat at her bedside, holding her hand, tears sliding silently down his cheeks. A mixture of relief, grief, and rage. When I stepped into the hallway, 2 state investigators and a sheriff's deputy were waiting for me. Are you prepared to accompany us to the studio? One asked. Yes, I said, but I need to warn you this isn't just one location. They flashed a grim smile. We know. The takedown happened early the next morning. The sun was barely rising when we arrived at Miracle Moment Studio, me, the investigators, and a quiet tension thick enough to choke on. The front door was unlocked again. The same lullaby music played softly from hidden speakers. But this time, the lights were bright. The supervisor, the woman with the unsettling smile, stood behind the desk, as if she'd been waiting. Back so soon, she said coolly. The lead investigator held up a warrant. By order of the State Medical Board, this facility is being shut down effective immediately. Her smile didn't falter. She folded her hands calmly. And on what grounds? He read from the document. Practicing medical imaging without a license. Fraud. Deception of clients. Endangerment. Potential medical negligence resulting in bodily harm or death. She blinked once. Slowly. That's quite a list. She didn't fight. She didn't argue. She simply said, "You don't understand the demand for what we offer. Some people need to believe things that aren't real." I stepped forward. "You nearly killed my sister." Her eyes shifted toward me. For the first time, her smile faded. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. "People come to us because they want a story. They want magic. They want something their doctors can't give them. They want the truth." I snapped. She leaned closer. "And do you think they'll still want the truth when you expose all of this? When they realize they paid for hope and got reality instead? When they find out some of their happy memories were manufactured?" Her words were meant to shake me. They didn't. "This ends now," I said. Investigators escorted her out. As she passed me, she whispered, "You're still not ready for who's behind all of this." The courtroom was packed 3 months later. Victims came forward, women, husbands, families clutching ultrasound printouts that were never real. Grace spoke too, voice trembling but strong. "I loved a baby who never existed." She said, "I planned for a future that was built on lies, and I nearly lost my life because someone wanted to sell me a fantasy." Her words broke the room's silence like glass. The supervisor was found guilty on all charges: fraud, unlicensed medical practice, and criminal negligence. But the owner, the true mastermind, never appeared. Her name was never found in the documents. Her trail vanished behind layers of false addresses and shell companies. A ghost in the system. And as the judge read the final sentence, I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't over. Not even close. Grace didn't remember from the surgery. Not the hours she spent in recovery. Not the doctors checking her vitals. Not the nurse who carefully brushed strands of hair from her forehead. But she remembered waking up. She told me later that the first thing she saw was Daniel's face, red-eyed, exhausted, but full of a relief so deep it made her heart ache. She remembered squeezing his hand, barely whispering, "Is the baby okay?" He broke down, right there, beside her bed. He cried the way people cry when they've been brave too long. And Grace quietly reached for me. I sat beside her, taking her hand gently. There was no easy way to say it. No gentle phrase strong enough to cushion the truth. "Grace," I whispered, "there was never a baby." She closed her eyes, and the sob that escaped her sounded like a lifetime collapsing in a single breath. Daniel held her while she cried, and I sat there helplessly, feeling every tear fall like a stone. The next weeks were the hardest. She barely spoke at first. She slept a lot, ate very little. Sometimes she would touch her stomach absent-mindedly, then stop suddenly, as if remembering all over again. Her therapist explained to us she's mourning a child who never existed, but one she fully loved. It's grief, but complicated grief. Daniel stayed home from work to care for her. I visited every afternoon, bringing soup she didn't touch, books she didn't open, soft blankets she didn't use. Some nights, I heard her from the guest room, quiet sobs muffled under the weight of heartbreak. But still, she was healing, slowly, quietly, the way wounds close from the inside out, long before the skin shows it. Meanwhile, investigators continued searching for the hidden owner of the Ultrasound network. The supervisor remained in prison. Rebecca's testimony helped shut down multiple locations. And yet, the mastermind, the ghost behind everything, had vanished deeper into the shadows. New shell companies were traced, fake identities uncovered, but the trail always ended abruptly, as if someone anticipated every move. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered whether I had stepped into something deeper than I realized. Something still watching, still listening. I didn't tell Grace any of that. Her heart had endured enough. 3 months after the trial, I got a message from Daniel. "Come over. There's something we want to tell you." I drove to their house, unsure what to expect. But when Grace opened the door, she was smiling, really smiling. Not forced, not fragile, but warm, like a light finally returning after a long winter. "You look different," I said softly. "I feel different," she whispered. She led me inside. In the living room, Daniel sat in an armchair, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a yellow blanket. For a moment, my breath caught. Grace took the bundle gently from him and turned toward me. "This is Ella," she said, her voice trembling with a sweet kind of joy. "She's 3 weeks old." My chest tightened. "Grace, whose baby is she?" Grace smiled, tears filling her eyes, but these were not the same tears she'd cried before. "She's ours," she whispered. "We finalized the adoption yesterday." I stepped closer. The baby's eyes fluttered open, soft, dark, curious. She made a tiny sound, the kind newborns make when the world still feels too big. She came to the hospital. Daniel said quietly, "A safe haven surrender." Her mother left her with a note saying she wanted her to go to a good family. Grace rocked the baby gently. I held her for the first time last week. And something just clicked. Not the way I imagined it before. Not the fantasy I had built in my head. This was real. She was real. She brushed a thumb across the baby's cheek. I spent so long grieving a child who never existed. And now I get to love the one who's right here. Her voice trembled. It feels like she was always meant to find us. I touched Grace's arm. Maybe she was... Ella yawned. A tiny, perfect sound that seemed to fill the entire room with peace. For the first time in months, the heaviness in my chest lifted. Grace was healing. Daniel was healing. A family rebuilt, reshaped, reborn was beginning again. Later that night, as I drove home through quiet streets, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. No caller ID. I hesitated before answering. A single voice, soft, female, unfamiliar, whispered, "You should stop digging." The line went dead. I pulled over, breath catching in my throat. The quiet hum of traffic passed in the distance. The world had just reminded me this story wasn't finished. Not really. Grace had her miracle, her healing, her new beginning. But somewhere out there, someone was still operating in the dark. Someone who didn't want the secrets uncovered. Someone watching. I took a deep breath, started the engine, and whispered to myself, "This isn't over," because it wasn't. Not yet. Some stories end loudly with verdicts, sirens, chaos, or final confrontations. But not this one. This one ends quietly, in the soft rhythm of a newborn's breathing, in the gentle weight of forgiveness settling over a wounded family, in the fragile hope of a future rebuilt from broken pieces. Grace healed slowly, the way winter melts into spring, not all at once, but in small, patient moments. Every time she held little Ella, every time she rocked her to sleep, every time she whispered a promise into that tiny ear, another part of her heart returned. Daniel found peace too. He told me one afternoon, while Ella napped on his chest, maybe we didn't get the life we imagined, but we got the one we were meant for. And he was right. Their home felt different now. Lighter, warmer, real. Not built on false hope or fantasy, but on truth, on healing, on the quiet miracle that arrived exactly when they needed her. I wish I could say that was the end. I wish I could tell you the network behind the fake ultrasounds was shut down forever, that justice found every last person responsible. But life doesn't always tie its ribbons neatly. Sometimes the shadows linger. Sometimes the phone rings from a number you don't recognize, with a voice that whispers, "You should stop digging." Sometimes you feel eyes watching that you can't quite see. And sometimes you have to make a choice, to walk away or to keep going. Grace has her ending, a peaceful, beautiful, healing ending. Mine is still being written. And if you stay with me, you'll see where the trail leads next.